With us today here on Public for a one-on-one conversation is Chris Hulls. Chris is the co-founder and CEO of Life360, one of the leaders in the family and location tracking space, also widely known, of course, for its tile tracking devices. I appreciate you being here, Chris. So first, in terms of being a location sharing app, let's start with the basics. How does it work and who is it for?
Sure. So we're targeting families. The core of Life360 is an app that you download on everybody's phone. You can see where everybody is, and then we layer on a whole bunch of other features on top of that. So alerts when people come and go, low battery, to things all the way up to safety, like SOS when you need it, disaster travel and medical assistance, automatic car crash detection with dispatch, and things as mundane as getting a tow truck. So we're really taking a lot of what were legacy services, bring them digital and for digitally native families, and that is our core user base.
You just had your first quarterly results. Congratulations on getting the first one over the finish line there. What did the quarter look like for you and your colleagues at the company? And talk to me about some of the catalysts that are bringing more people into the Life 360 ecosystem. We're certainly seeing shares of the company pop after the report.
Yeah, so we feel like we have a very strong demographic tailwind. And although this is our first quarter on the NASDAQ, we've been public on the ASX for 5 years. So I think what a lot of investors have seen is we've been a very predictable business. In particular, as tech's gone through this realignment to growth at all costs, we have always been able to hit guidance, generate real cash flow, show financial leverage. We grow organically. And some recent themes, we now have expanded our footprint to international. That's growing very well. And I think people are understanding that location sharing in and of itself, it really isn't creepy. It's so useful. It's so powerful. We as a company really built the product in a way that gives people freedom without feeling that they're being tracked. And I think it's just ramping up very quickly. And as you see more generic alternatives like Apple's product entering the space, it actually helps us because people get comfortable with something that was very misinterpreted for most of the time we've been around.
Do you still find that you have any potential customers who maybe do find not necessarily your specific offering, but kind of find the idea of it to be, to use your word, a bit creepy? And what does that kind of look like to either break that stigma or help people better understand that we can leverage the technology we have for safety and not in overly invasive personal ways?
So that number is dwindling by the day. It still happens internationally, but going back to what's driving this growth now, the US leads a lot of trends, and we see other areas catch up. So Europe is now catching up to where the US was, and we see when we hit about 3% tipping points, things accelerate. And we're hopeful it could go even faster because, as mentioned, there are the generic alternatives such as Apple Find My, and you might counterintuitively think, oh man, is that bad for Life 360? If they were cross-platform, which they're not, and really good, that might be. But we usually see it is it helps popularize categories and makes people have that understanding that this is actually really a utility. And one of the even bigger misconceptions is, yes, safety is at a core. But when people try the product, they realize like, actually it's even more than safety. This is just convenient. I don't have to say how far away are you. I get that quick reinforcement that everything's going well through the day. A lot of our customers say it's actually a sense of togetherness. And one thing we did that's very different than many of our earlier competitors, there's no kid and parent version of the app. Everyone is on the same exact version. We actually I'm at a conference right now, and there's users like, my kids track me more than I track them. And that is very normal. They thought they were kind of weirdos. They're really not. And I think we're just in this very early march. And as millennials become the dominant parent demographic, I think we're just going to keep growing, and we're going to have that replicated internationally because it's just a really different perception.
Chris, the premium product right now seems to be very much tied to families and teens. That's largely what we've been talking about. But the overall user base is a lot broader. And you walk through some of those use cases at the start of our conversation. How do you continue to tap into those wider opportunities aside from the sort of distinction that you already laid out in terms of this being a direct relationship between parents and their children?
Yeah, so when we think about the long-term vision, we actually don't say parents. We talk about the family organizer, because there's usually someone in a given household or even extended family that's just stuff falls in them. My mom's unfortunately suffering from dementia right now, and I'm the family organizer. I have little kids that are actually too young for Life 360, but I use it much more with my mom. Before we took her keys away, we were actually using the product to let us know she was driving safely. If she wasn't, it was a good just safety net that if something were to happen, we would know about it. And ultimately, it was part of that decision to take away her keys. You can imagine how that becomes a premium product in the future. So what we see is once we get a customer on the free side, they stay almost indefinitely. We might have one of the top 10 mobile apps, period, in terms of retention, because we actually get negative churn after that initial drop off. So if you think about how we grow monetization, it will be launching different products for different life stages because we keep the free customers, whether they have little kids to aging parents themselves. And there's so many directions we can go with that. We're now expanding into things. You mentioned Tile, financial services for kids could be another one, pets, pet insurance, home security, home insurance, driving insurance, elder care. There are so many things if we have that customer and we build a brand around trust where we can then use your data to give you services you actually appreciate. There's so much we can do, and we feel confident we're in the early days as a business.
I appreciate you sharing the more personal component of you and your family, and I certainly send your family the
Thank
best.
you.
But it's really it's interesting to hear that kind of come from you in a very personal way in terms of a use case and how it applies to your own loved ones. Chris, some new features are expected to roll out in the back half of the year, including for Tile. Talk to us about the innovation pipeline coming up. What can we expect for some of those new features, and how soon?
Sure. So we're going to have a whole range of smaller new features across the entire app. This year, there won't be anything that is a single new thing, but it's a lot of small things. So we're expanding our circles to make it easier to temporarily share location because that's becoming more and more of a thing. We're going to have a lot of refinements on the map. We're not losing our focus on the family organizers, but we see so many things like college students and friends using it. So we're going to make it a little bit better for them. And on Tile, I don't want to give away too much in our big launch, which is coming up very soon. But you can think of Life360 as really a safety umbrella, and we believe devices have an opportunity to move towards safety in a way that right now they're really not. And there's some pretty big limitations on like air tags. They're useless to protect against stolen items because if you put an air tag on your bike and a thief steals it, just goes ding, 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 air tag following you. And now with actually the Google Finder network, all phones are actually alerting thieves to the presence of tags. So we've created a system that you can actually opt out of that if you scan your ID. And so we're really going to lean into safety and protection with our hardware products, and big unveiling in a few weeks.
So to the point here of AirTag competition, I think anyone in the tech space would for the most part look at a company like Apple and say, probably the big dog on the block for
Yep,
any of its technology or hardware that it
absolutely.
has. But why is it important to have your own location network as opposed to partnering with a Google or an Apple, given what you just laid out about competition from AirTag?
Sure. So Google and Apple now have networks, but they're extremely limited in what they allow people to do. A lot of it, in our minds, they're protecting against very, very rare instances of stalking, but they're really limiting what developers can do. So if you want to, you cannot make a device integrate with their networks while she's showing it in a third-party app. So all they really are is kind of dumb beacons, and not dumb in a bad way. It's very useful. Whereas like with Tile, you can do a reverse ring to find your phone. We can add other functionality. We can do location history. We can do a bunch of safety features you just could not do. And you're going to see that a lot of the people partnering with the Googles and Apples of the world, they're going to have very limited functionality. And we are not trying to go head to head with Apple on a generic key finder. I will be the first to say, if you just want to find your keys, you're already an Apple user, you don't have a family, we have some areas we are better than AirTags, but I'd say, that's kind of potato. You're not going to get that much better experience on Tile. Some things will be better on AirTags. But if you want it to have multiple form factors, some of the safety features that I wish I could talk about more, but a few weeks away, if you want to protect your items from theft, we're trying to carve out that niche. And anything you set up with Life360 in a Tile, it's automatically shared with your whole family. And in that family use case where there isn't that privacy, like, where are the keys right now? Where's the dog right now? And the amount of time I use the Tile for our dog is huge because I just don't know if she's home. She's with my wife on a walk. It's just really handy. And it's not
Mm.
seamless with AirTag. So we are carving out our own niche. And not the question you asked, but I think a really exciting or interesting parallel is AirPods, where Apple came into the space. They sucked all the air out of the room for a few years. They weren't the first player. Jawbone was there well before Apple, but Apple popularized it. And now Apple shares market share is actually going down while the categories increase 1,000x, literally 1,000x, because Bose now has the high end. You have some low end options for people who don't want to spend $180 on the Apple version. You have the audiophile one. You have the noise canceling versions. There's so many different ones, and so we think uh, everything that's worth over a few $100 is going to be tracked in some way in the next few years. A lot of people are going to take AirTags. It will probably always be the biggest Bluetooth tag. But if you're in a family and you want the safety and protection, we think we can really differentiate in a major way. And back to my own personal
I,
story, we are going to work on some elder care products in the future.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. Talk to me about advertising opportunities and what does that look like from the user end, and how big a priority is that for you in the business? New hires, new partnerships that I understand have been added to that side of the business. What does that look like for you and for the end consumer, I wonder?
So I'll start for the business side. We've been very focused as a company, trying not to open up too many fronts. And we've always been open with the market. The next direction we go is how do we monetize with ads, lead gen, pairing our customers with other offerings. So we think over time it could equal the subscription business. There's a lot of risk and unknown there. But if you look at some interesting comps, you look at Credit Karma as a company smaller than us from an MAU base when they were sold. Uh, but what they did is they took highly, highly sensitive data, much more sensitive than the data we collect, your social security number, everything you need literally to steal someone's identity. You'd give that to them. They earned trust around it, so it wasn't a bad thing. But then they would give you credit card offers, and those were ads. But to a customer, they didn't really feel like an ad. It was helping you get the right credit card for your credit score and helping you make a decision. So I think we can do similar things. The one I'm most excited about is car insurance, because if we can be like, hey, JD, did you know you're in the top 10% of drivers, you're so safe, you could get a real rate discount by sharing your data with an insurer. If it's done in a transparent way that you know that you are actually giving someone like us as an intermediary who is not going to abuse it, that's very powerful for you. Or if you're like, you are a crazy reckless driver, you should never share your data with an insurance company, that's also good. We found that more than half our customers would actually save money with a rate that floats based on how they drive. But I think when we can build that trust, that's going to be huge. So that's a longer term, multi-year arc. Right now, we are doing something that is a bit more akin just to the dumb banners. The product purist in me doesn't like it, but we're trying to be very cautious around. Let's not do like full screen videos that would juice the numbers but hurt engagement. Like we are a task to be done app. So a little banner ad that's a little tasteful, maybe not perfect, not going to make us a huge amount of money, but to get the pipes going, it will validate the market. One thing we have shared with the market too, unlike when we build a new major product, there's a year to build, another year to dial it in. It's really the third year we make any sort of money, and we're wrong at least half the time. Advertising a little bit easier. We're starting with the easy stuff, and it's self-funding. So the contribution margin over any given year from advertising is always going to be positive. So very different
I'm
way.
hoping we if I could just revisit another question on the elder care part, because again, I think it's really interesting for your own personal story. Is that something in addition, Chris, to your own family that you've seen a big
Oh yeah.
kind of request for from a potential user base, and how does any of the functionality there maybe differ from other other use cases that is being used in the family, let's say for your children relative to elder care?
So as a product guy, I get more. What's even more exciting than talking to you is actually seeing what they do in the hard numbers. So our customers have kind of they're using it for elder care already, even though that's not the emphasis. So seeing how an elder's driving, making sure they're home at night, that's the basics. But with a few tweaks to the software, we can actually have a real elder care product before we have any hardware, which we'll eventually do. So I'll talk about my mom. Feature I'd love is like, when's the last time she picked up her phone? She's at home a lot. And so I hack together the system. I have a Ring doorbell, and I look at that to make sure she's coming and going. So why do you do that? Give Life360. Well, because I don't know if she wanted it off without her phone. So I use the camera to do a backup once a day to make sure she's home at night. But if I could just see the last time she picked up her phone, that would be a really strong signal, and I wouldn't need that hack camera that I've done. I can get access from steps without any really even anything new. It's just a simple UI, and we already have a 24/7 SOS service. Let's the call center that we use, they do PERS, personal emergency response system. So we can essentially take a few small tweaks in the software, rebrand it, plus when a senior is ready for it, have the hardware device. So I'm just so excited about that. It's just a timing issue. But in the next few years, it's absolutely something I see being a core piece of the business.
And before I let you go, any other future use cases, new revenue streams, or kind of a merger acquisition strategy? I know there's probably a lot you're working on that you can't say or wouldn't even want to talk about, but give us some sense about what could be coming down the pike a bit.
Sure. Well, there are so many, especially over a multi-year journey. Our goal is to be the brand that brings families digital across all life stages. You have Facebook and their properties for friends. You have LinkedIn for professionals. So we think the real opportunity is like thinking bigger than safety. We already have 13% of all phones in the US running Life360. There is a real chance we could be a billion user company. All these trends are going our way. And if we have the customers, I think we can be like a membership service in a much bigger way. Think of like a modern day AAA or USCA where, yes, you're getting this very specific service, but you get the much bigger halo. You're getting deals, you're getting discounts. We're a service you can trust to point you to other products. I think that's what you're going to see over a multi-year arc. And there are some short and midterm ones with new verticals. I talked to companies in the fintech space, debit cards for kids, things like that. The great partnership opportunities, the insurance piece, the home security piece. There are just so many. So I hope that if we talk again in a year, we'll have had at least one more vertical in the bag and rapid fire innovation as we continue to grow.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that conversation as well. Congrats on the earnings call. Congrats on the success so far. That's Chris Holes, co founder and CEO of Life360. Chris, thanks a lot.
Thank you.